Hi everyone! Welcome to another episode of Workshopped.It. Today we're going to tackle Jaymin Eve's Shadow Beast series, Book 1, Rejected. As some of you may already know, I read Rejected and the entire 3 books of the Shadow Beast series earlier this year. In fact, I liked it so much when I was done with book 2, I actually included Mera in my 5 Badass Women on Kindle Unlimited series. And you can check that video out here in the iCards if you're interested in it. I found something about Mera really likable. There's this element in the story that's a little bit fourth wall breaking Deadpool-esque. It's just like a very fun, likable rom. It takes you in, and as you're reading, it just encourages you to keep going with the story. So I thought that this series was actually going to make it into one of my top 10 series for 2021. By the time we got to book 3, there started to become some cracks in the overall story, weaknesses that I had realized actually started in book 1 and came to fruition in book 3 and really tainted the overall series for me, which is why we're here workshopping it today instead of placing it on one of my top tier lists. I still would definitely recommend the Shadow Beast series. It's such a fun story. I just want to make it the best that it can be. And to get us started, I want to start by giving you a summary of Rejected. My father made a terrible mistake, one I'm left paying for. As a wolf shifter growing up in a strong pack, I should be living my best life. But after my father tried to kill the alpha, I'm labeled an outcast, traitor, less than dirt. When I can't take pack life any longer, I run. But apparently they don't like losing their punching bag. Oren, the alpha's son, drives me back before my first shift. A shift that will reveal my true mate. I never could have predicted who mine would be, but the moment my wolf looks upon, I'm filled with hope for a brighter future. After all, no one ever rejects their true mate, right? Wrong. Very wrong. When the wolves attack, my soul screams for vengeance, and somehow I touch the shadow world. Somehow I bring him to our lands. The Shadow Beast, our shifter god. The devil himself. Turns out being rejected by my mate was only the beginning. So, as some of you may know, Rejected, this summary, actually sounds a lot to me like The Rejected Mate, which is a story I read in 2020 and actually have a Workshopped.It on, which I'll link up here in the iCards above. And that story had a great cover on it and had some potential things that interested me, which I detail more in that Workshopped.It. The story just lacked a cohesiveness, it lacked a basic plot and character development, and it just made it really hard to continue reading that story. And because these two plots were so similar, even though there were things that called to me in Rejected, it took me a long time to actually pick up the book and give it a read. In fact, the only reason I ever decided to read this book was because it is very highly rated on GoodReads by a lot of people. In fact, right now, for 2021, it is the most rated and reviewed book on my Kindle list. So a lot of people have read it, a lot of people have enjoyed it, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and give it a try too. And I'm really glad I did. The story is a lot of fun. It's pretty cohesive, and there's a lot of things to love in this book. Let's start with the good things about Rejected. When I reread the first book in this series, I realized that Jaymin Eve had planted a lot of foreshadowing and future elements for book 2 and 3, which let me know that she had outlined the whole series before she started writing book 1, and it gave me a respect for her thoughtfulness, her general ability to tell a story. So I want to give her props for that, and I want to acknowledge that there was obviously a plan for this book the whole time, and that the series probably has turned out the way she wants it to be. The first book gives a great sense of stakes as well. We get to meet Mera right away, we see that she's being bullied by her peers, and we see that the adults are allowing it. So we know that her health, her safety, and her happiness is at stake. And we also know right now she can't transform into a werewolf, but when she does that, she's going to become a captive of the pack, and it's going to be even harder for her to escape this life. The book also does a great job escalating stakes. She comes to a tipping point and she runs away from the pack even before she shifted. She's like, you know what, I can't risk transforming with the pack. It will bond me too much to the alpha. I won't be able to get away, or he won't give me permission to escape. And then they track her down, they capture her right before her first shift. So we know that she's tried something, it hasn't worked, and now that they know she wants to leave, the alpha actually does threaten to bond her even more closely to the pack than her first transformation already would. So that gives us further warning, like there's never gonna be an escape. No one is ever gonna let Mera leave. It makes the walls feel like they're closing in. It also makes her desperation more understandable, and it puts the audience right away in a position to root for Mera going forward. I also think the first book does a great job establishing Mera's general personality. I know who she is as a person. She's a distinct individual. Who she is as a person makes sense, and I can relate and empathize with her. All of that is working. I do think there are a couple of areas where Mera tries to explain why she is the way she is, or what her reasoning is for reacting to certain things in a specific way, like her general fearlessness when she's in danger and things like that. And I don't think she does a good job articulating why she is the way she is. She spends too long doing it, and I also think it makes her less relatable instead of more relatable. So if I were the author, I wouldn't waste my time with that. I'd let her actions speak for themselves alongside whatever traumatic experiences she's had. And a reader can even either relate and go along with it, or they cannot. But I think trying to justify it or relate it is actually bad and brings the story down. The Shadow Beast mythology within this first book is just enough. We get a little taste before we meet the Shadow Beast, so we know that he is the creator of all shifters. They pray to him like a deity. Some people believe in him, some people don't. But his basic creation myth is that he created shifters and that sometimes they pray to him. He's not all good, but he is very powerful. He's not all knowing, but he knows more than them. So I think that's like a fun god setup. This god setup really appealed to like the pagan polytheist in me, because it's not an all-knowing, all-powerful god. It's not a god that everyone should worship. In fact, Mera kind of casually mentions that humans have other gods they should worship, and I like that different people should follow whichever god works for them. You know, it's a philosophy I enjoy, that openness. And I really appreciate that we don't spend a lot of time wondering whether or not the Shadow Beast is real or not, because in the summary we already mentioned the Shadow Beast is summoned and he comes, so as readers we know he's real. But the other thing is, as a religious person, the whole whether or not God or gods exist is not like an interesting conversation to me. It's not interesting to have in the real world. It's even less interesting to have in fiction, because like it doesn't really matter. Does it? I mean, people believe or they don't, and they go about their own life. And to me, that's like a deeply personal thing. That's their business. And as long as they're not trying to put their will on other people, who cares? I just feel like we have the does God exist conversation so often in our society. So it's kind of a waste of time. And I appreciated the book did not waste my time. Another thing the book does well is it establishes the whole true mates thing pretty well. So werewolves have this trope where they transform into werewolves, and when one wolf meets the other wolf, if it's the right two pairing, something clicks in their brain and they just know it, and from then on they're together. This is a kind of insta-love, and stories justify it different ways. In this particular story, I think they do a great job balancing it. They don't try to explain it too much. They're like, hey, it just happens. Like, when you're a wolf and the other person is a wolf and you lock eyes, you just know. And once you know that, you guys are together forever, which can be really problematic. And what I love about this book is it actually dives into some of those problematic elements. In Mera's case, her mom and her dad were true mates. After the dad attacks the alpha and is killed, she reverts to alcoholism. So we can see that one without the other can be very destructive. And another thing we can see is the alpha and his mate are both true mates too. And they're like cheating on each other and not treating each other very well. So yeah, there's this click that just happens, and it's very romantic, and the wolves always go with it and are looking for it all the time. But much like the pressures of marriage today and the whole being together forever and taking care of each other forever runs into problems, we can see that that's reflected even when your souls create this insta-love bond connection. It was like an ideal that everyone was looking forward, and then it started deconstructing deconstructing it and showing how that doesn't always work out, or how people corrupt it, use it for power, do all kinds of different things that the bond wasn't meant to do. So there's like a lot of interesting relationship dynamics and themes that are being explored there that apply both in this like werewolf situation and also in the real world. The fantasy parts of the world building in this series are also excellent. I think that Jaymin Eve weaves traditional mythology with her own made-up world very well together. This isn't her first book. She has quite a few series about werewolf shifters and fairies and all kinds of stuff, and you can see that she's perfected this. It's well crafted, it goes together. The fantasy elements of the story, I believe they make sense, and I'm ready to go with them. For Mera, she is going on like a traditional chosen one journey, and book one does a really good job disguising that. At first, like, we know that there's something special about Mera compared to other werewolves, and we know that she needs to do something specifically for the shadow beast pretty early on, but we don't know exactly why she's special or chosen. We don't know how special she is. Is it just like a little quirk, or is it like a big deal? They do a good job sort of keeping that under wraps, evolving it naturally, and they balance her specialness, her chosen one, with like what's relatable and interesting about her. I think especially in this first book, the first two books really, Mera's chosen story is done well. Let's go ahead and talk about some things that could be improved. The real world sense of place is just so terrible in this book. I think we're in the USA. I don't really know. Like, I can't tell if we're in a desert or a forest or a mountain. It feels like all these places shifted. In fact, when I sat down to write this script, I was like, oh, we're in the desert. And then I was reading the book again, and there's all these mention of trees, and I was like, okay, forests, lakes, we're in like a forest land. And then for some reason, when she escapes to a small town, I felt like it was a small mountain town. I don't even know what specifically gave me that vibe from the human world town. And I was like, all right, so maybe we're in the mountains in the forest, but I just don't know. And even continuing to read, because she leaves the human world and goes to a shadow beast realm, right? But she comes back to this human world within this book. She comes back and forth a lot in the second book, and the third book, like over a third of the book happens in the normal human world. And I would have just loved a better sense of place than I was getting. Like, where specifically is this pack located at? There's not like a good understanding of how the pack interacts with the larger world. Like, I get that the pack is self-isolated, and I get that they're secret from the rest of the human world, and I get that they're like their own small town. There are other places like this that really exist. Like, if you think about communes or cults, they barely interact with the outside world, but we still know they exist even when they're in their own little town. We still know about the programs they have, and they have like a pretty specific structure set up to continue their economic growth, continue for their town to survive. And I wasn't getting that from this werewolf town. Do they all do a lot of construction? Are they farmers and they're like a small town farm? You know, do they have like a lot of artesian things? Do they, I don't know, sell like a bunch of blankets or something and everyone's making blankets? Or they're hunters? Or are they all like travel guides who take people on outdoorsy adventures and stuff, like bougie outdoorsy adventures, and they take that money and they fund their town with it? I have no idea, but it continually bothered me throughout the series that I didn't know how this werewolf town was existing. And it's even more frustrating because they have their own like special werewolf school, like grade school, high school, and then it appears to be a community college. We start out in some kind of private werewolf community college that Mera's in. And Mera seems to be a lit major, which, like, if they don't like her, why are they letting her go to college? Why isn't she doing some kind of unpleasant job? On top of that, she's in college for something that doesn't have a specific real world thing she can do. It looks like she's an English major with a lit focus. I'm an English major with a creative writing focus, so no shade to anyone who majors in that. It's just that there's not a specific job for us out there in the real world. So if you are going to be part of the self-isolated pack, and your education is about prepping you for a job. What job are we being prepped for? And on top of that, this college is really weird. It felt like a high school. Like there were bells and there were periods, and it seemed like everyone was doing a regular school day. And that's not how college courses work. I guess you could do a regular school day, but even when I was my freshman year doing the most standard thing, like most of my classes happened Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for an hour, and they weren't back to back, even though I tried to make them mostly back to back so I could be done with my day. It's like my schedule is all over the place in college, and most college experience is like that. Most people don't do a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 school scenario. That's weird. And even though this book is pitched as a new adult college book, it felt like she was trying to capture that high school audience as well as that college audience. And it also felt like the school part of this existed specifically so that she could put it in the new adult and college category on Amazon, because the college part doesn't really relate to anything else that's going on. And you might be wondering why I'm spending so much time complaining about it and trying to fix it if it doesn't have to do with the larger story. But this little thing that's happening in the first 3 chapters where there's nothing believable about this college applies to everything in the human world. All the different realms I believe are real. I believe there are rules. I believe they exist. They're very well thought out. And there's nothing grounding about the human world. You guys might remember in the Wolf Awakened workshop that I talked about urban fantasy world building, and I overlooked in Wolf Awakened when this didn't happen. There weren't these grounding real world elements because it was isolated enough within the pack that I didn't care. But unfortunately, in this story, you kind of have to care because she does go outside the pack into the human world. Her pack relates to other packs in different ways, and it just becomes this big question: how are all of them out across the world living this way? Why is this pack the most powerful? More questions that keep building and building and building, and instead of looking at the drama that's happening or trying to search for whatever we're looking for in the human world, I'm just asking these questions in my head. And I think it starts with something as small as the college that she's going to feeling like a real and actual college. Another element we really need to work on in this story is the relationships. Mera feels like a real person. Jaymin Eve does a great job making her relatable and interesting and fully fleshed out. And I think she does a great job with the Shadow Beast. But then pretty much every other character seems to serve just for like a Mera Shadow Beast relationship. The easiest thing to do would be to cut the characters that aren't working out. But unfortunately, it would leave us with just Mera and the Shadow Beast. So that would be awkward. While interesting characters aren't enough to hold the story on their own, they do need some of these other peripheral characters. Let's start with Mera's best friend, Simone. Rejected, the story we're talking about now, is a lot like The Rejected Mate, in that the best friend doesn't make any sense. Like, why is someone best friends with Mera when she's treated badly? Who is this girl, and why has she picked Mera up out of the goodness of her heart to befriend? So it would be great if Simone had something going on in her life that made it make sense that she's friends with Mera. But she doesn't have that. I don't know, it could have been very simple. Like, she could have had a stutter, and all the other kids could have made fun of her stutter. Mera doesn't make fun of her stutter, and the two of them become best friends that way. Or she could be very clumsy, and everyone makes fun of her, you know, like, no shift, you're shifty clumsy, you don't have a real wolf, blah, 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 blah. And the same way they're kind of making fun of Mera for being descended from, like, her line of traders or whatever, and that bonds the two of them together. Something very simple could have been done to explain why they're friends. And then the other issue with Simone is that we spend a lot of time getting to know her in the beginning of this. We have like a lot of superfluous details about her, and she really doesn't matter to the story. And this isn't just a rejected and the rejected mate kind of issue. This is an all chosen one ever kind of story. When you have one character who is an underdog, who's like below average for the norm, and they get plucked out by destiny or fate or whatever, and like leveled up to 1,000,000 because they have this huge epic quest that they have to solve and only they can solve. Obviously, the best friend who's like Normie McNormalson is not going to be able to keep up. And as a writer, you're going to struggle to make them continue to be relevant in the story. So then you have like a couple of options as the writer, what you do with that going forward. You can not have a best friend, which would be simplest. But the problem for me here is one of the things I do like about Simone is that she's like a very supportive, strong female best friend. And I like female friendships and I like supportive environments, so I want to maintain that even if I'm not 100% sure how to do it just yet. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with Simone for the entire 3-book arc, but I do have some plans about what we'll do with her in this first story. Issue number 2 is going to be Jaxon. He was Mera's best friend from the age of 0 to 8, and then once her dad attacked the Alpha, Jaxon turned on her, became an incredible bully to her, and in fact, he is going to be the second in command to the Alpha. And the two of them like gang up together and are especially nasty to her. And even more nasty because they know her personally and are able to get under her skin in a way that other people can't. You learn things about Jaxon where you see that this is a bully who's being bullied at home, and that's how the cycle of bullying is happening, which is like a complicated and delicate situation to handle. It gives more depth to the Jaxon character. The problem with that is we also learn that Jaxon is 100% obsessed with Mera in like a weird sexual way, and he's very chauvinistic, and at the same time he's acting like he's doing her a favor. So there's just like too many complicated things handled in this weird casual way with this character, and I don't like it. I try to think about how to fix it because I like the bully being bullied at home story that's happening here, and I wanted to address like family abuse, signs of it, and different ways that it could be dealt with. Like this story has the potential to dive into all of those things, but I just don't like it enough to wade through this weird sexual obsession. I've decided we're just gonna boot him out of the story. Get him out. No more Jaxon. He's gone. I don't know what to do with him or how to deal with him. The simplest thing is to get rid of that dude. Once Mera has been taken by the Shadow Beast, she ends up making friends with someone who is literally an angel. Here in the first book, I actually think it's a good relationship. I understand how the two of them end up bonding. I understand why they're friends. I understand enough about Angel, the fact that she has a tragic past, the fact that she has a loyalty to family and her family is gone, that I see why she's quiet. I see how they're going to build loyalty going forward, and I'm okay with it. Now, the Angel-Mera relationship starts to be a problem in book 2 and 3, and we're going to have to tackle it a little bit there, but I'm willing to let this beginning just be what it is. We need another strong, powerful woman who actually can help Mera confront and face things as she goes forward and continues to level up, if you will. The Shadow Beast's friends, I think there's like 5 of them. I don't even know how many there are. And here's the deal. I couldn't tell one from the other. I could never remember who was who. And their powers weren't that unique or different. Their personalities weren't unique or different. That's why I'm grouping them all together. Also, the relationship doesn't make any sense. It's very confusing. I don't know what I would do to fix this. I know how to do a whole bunch of different male friendships, healthy male relationships, how to integrate different male personalities. The problem is that the Shadow Beast himself is like dark and broody, and I don't know how that dude is friends with other people. So really, like, if I were gonna workshop this particular element, I'd want a co-writer who is male, and I'd want some insight. I'd want to bounce some ideas off each other and just dialogue it further. So since I don't have that with me right now, I'm just gonna make checkmark Shadow Beast and his 4 or 5 friends. I don't even know how many friends there are. They're so the same. And in fact, someone's probably gonna be like, actually, it's only 3 friends. Alright, cool. We need to fix that. They need their own personalities. They need their own interpersonal reactions. We gotta do something with that. And the other thing I'll say is it's weird that in both this story, Rejected, and in the Rejected Mate, the true mate for our main character is the future alpha of the pack. This is like pretty common in all rejected mate scenarios, that it's like someone who's the omega or the lowest level pack member, and their true mate is the leader of their pack or another pack, and often their replacement is also a leader. And I feel like this should say something about sexism or relationship standards or power dynamics in relationships. Minimally, in these stories, the rejecter often regrets the decision or the words that they make, So there's like a don't judge a book by its cover, or different kinds of strength, or hidden potential in people if you support them instead of tear them down kind of theme going on in a lot of these stories. And I like that theme. I think that's part of the pull of the rejected mate genre, if you will, is that,
oh, they made a mistake and they underestimated me, or they didn't see my true value.
Like, that theme is part of what draws people to listening. But the problem here is there's already so many true mate dynamics going on where we see how complicated these relationships are, how these relationships are idealized, and then the reality of them, and how some of these relationships are abusive or not as good as relationships that a person could walk into and willingly choose and negotiate for themselves. So this like alpha lower pack member scenario that's going on here actually takes away from some of the other more powerful and interesting themes going on in this book. And I would probably just do a rejected mate who is like mid-level pack. Alright, let's final pitch this. Game respects game here. I am not going to take the college element out. I respect that part of what Jaymin Eve is doing here is putting the college in so that she can make this a new adult college story and have the setting right there in the first chapter pulling her reader in. I'm just going to make the college more believable. I already discussed how we're going to do that. Our character Mera can be taking the lit course as an elective. She won't discuss what her major is or why she's majoring in it. I will set her up with a service job where she's got to be nice to people and people are giving her shit regardless. When she runs away from the pack, she's going to take her best friend Simone with her because that's like the first time the two of them separate, and if we're going to keep Simone here, we're going to have to find a way to make her more relevant. And that's cool. It could lead us to more female bonding, fun scenes of them working together, making friends, having a good time in the real world, and being accepted outside of the werewolf pack. I think all of that's good. I think the way we get the fight scene when the pack drags her back is we have Simone at home and being captured on her own, and she'll find a way to get Simone or get in contact with Simone later. And that way we can still have that intense moment where Mera stabs the alpha to be in the chest with the knife and really hurts him. The other thing we're going to do is when Mera becomes friends with Angel, he takes her to her homelands once, but she's going to actually take Mera back to Mera's home so she can talk with Simone. And that way Simone can be doing some research, maybe she can dig up some information on the Shadow Beast or Shadow Beast realms, and that's part of how Simone can continue to be helpful. She can continue to give tidbits, she can have a way to access Mera without relying on the Shadow Beast or without being directly in the Shadow Beast realm. We're going to remove Jaxon from this story. We're going to make Mera's mate powerful but not the alpha to be. And other than that, I think the book in structure, the general structure for book 1 makes sense and is enjoyable. These are very little changes, but they're going to have larger ripple effects in book 2 and book 3. So I hope you guys enjoyed this Workshopped.It. I hope you pick something up about things that work well in storytelling and things to avoid. And I hope you have maybe a little more insight into this whole werewolf rejected mate genre. If you're into werewolf reads, I actually have a whole playlist where I do different Workshopped.Its and I do different werewolf recommendations in a fantasy setting, usually urban fantasy on Kindle Unlimited. And I also have a whole playlist of other Workshopped.It if you just want to dig into different kinds of storytelling elements and see different kinds of alternative pitches. Other than that, I want to thank you for sticking with me through this video. Please go ahead and leave a like if you got to the end. Comment down below, have you read Rejected? And if so, what did you think of it? And if you like this kind of content where we evaluate fantasy and science fiction stories, we break them down and see what's working, what's not working, please consider subscribing to my channel. I have weekly uploads on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Central Time. And right now, I'm also doing a more casual weekly upload on Sunday where I'm discussing the Nevers and what I felt about the most recent release. So thanks again for watching. Hope you guys have a great day. Bye!